You need to get up at this time. You need to look this way. Like I let go of all that stuff pretty early about the way your child's appearing and taking some of the load off of him. Sometimes when I could, I would pick out his clothes or say this outfit or that outfit. That was very helpful for me. Doing this one or that one, not just free will choice, like anything, because that's what took a lot of time. So, when you're saying like, what hills are you going to die on?
Are you overwhelmed by motherhood and barely keeping your head above water? Are you confused and frustrated by how all the other moms make it look so easy? You can't figure out how to manage the chaos in your mind, your home, or your family. I get you, mama. Parenting with ADHD is hard. Here is your permission slip to let go of the Pinterest-worthy visions of organization and structure fit for everyone else. Let's do life like our brains do life. Creatively, lovingly, and with all our might. When we embrace who we are and how our brains work, we can figure out how to live our lives successfully and, in turn, lead our families well. At the end of the day, we just want to be good moms. But, spoiler alert, you are already a great mom. ADHD does not mean you're doomed to be a hot mess, mama. You can rewrite your story from shame spiral to success story. And I'll be right here beside you to cheer you on. Welcome to Motherhood in ADHD. Hey there, Successful Mama. It's your friend, Patricia Sung. It's ADHD Awareness Month, and look at me. It only took me 5 years on the podcast to pull together a series for ADHD Awareness Month. Just so you know, it is never too late. Every episode this month will be a new guest expert on the field of ADHD. I am so honored that these powerhouses are here to share with you. So let's dive in with today's guest. Welcome to today's episode with IngerShaye Colzie. IngerShaye is someone that I have been watching for a few years, and I adore the quiet strength that she speaks with, the way she leads by example, the way that she truly cares for the ADHD community and all that she is doing and making great strides to move this community forward. While she has an incredible background of being a clinical social worker and being a therapist and an ADHD coach and many an accolade, today we're lucky enough to hear her talk about being a mom with ADHD to a child with ADHD and how do we let go of the pretenses and what we thought it was going to look like and really lean into parenting in the way that fits us best. How do we bring hope every day when things are hard? How do we help take the load off our kids? And when we see them in distress, how do we support them? We go through practical things, the tools and the strategies that we could use, but also IngerShaye speaks from the heart in how we can wisely lead our families in making it the way that fits us. IngerShaye is a beacon of hope in the Black community as well, speaking to Black women with ADHD, speaking to Black professionals with ADHD. She is rallying her community and making a difference. And I cannot wait for you to hang out with us today. So let's dive in and welcome IngerShaye to the show. Hello there, ma'am.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you hanging in?
Oh, I'm hanging in.
Hey, trying to keep up with all the things with the school and the...
Yeah. You look up, they're teenagers, and you're like, I'm going to rip all my hair out. And then they're graduating it out and off to wherever. And you're like, hold on. That felt like 2 years max.
Yeah. So is your son still close by?
Yes. He was about a half an hour from here. He's just working. He wasn't really ready for school. He still isn't ready for school. When he talks about going to school, I'm like, why? Just because everyone else is going to school? It's not for everyone.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. And that was, I think, one of my most frustrating things teaching high school is that it's all this college prep. And I'm like, this is not for everybody. And also we really need some electricians.
Absolutely. We
need some skilled labor that is like, this is not a joke. This is an excellent career that you can make a great living at. You have to be good at it or else you're going to, kill somebody. But this is tech stuff. There's just so much out there. I'm like, why don't we have that here? And I don't know, where I grew up, we had a community college where you could do half day at the high school and half day at community college. And I had a friend who graduated and was a dental hygienist. And they
Mhm.
had like so many programs. Like they don't have anything like that here.
Yeah, they do have that here. That's what he did do because he was done with school. He actually
Good.
finished early because he's the academic stuff. Even though it felt hard, it was hard because he was bored.
Mm,
Essentially, that's why it was really hard.
yeah.
I think I might have told you that story, and this is always a good story I have to tell people. So he was in algebra. You have to here we have the test that you have to take to graduate. I can't remember which one it is. Anyway, algebra is a part of it. He was in honors algebra. He was not doing well, and then they're like, he doesn't come and, to office hours and blah, blah, blah. And like, first off, he wanted to be directive at office hours. But then come to talk to him, he's like, Mom, I go. And all she does is says the same thing that she said in class. I don't know what she's saying. So I was like, okay. And so we went through stuff and they were like, well, we could put him in. So they only had honors or like basically slow. So I felt about it. So, and I was like, well, what happens if there's a problem? Like he's going to have to, pass it. What are we going to do? And they were like, it'll be fine. We'll keep up with it. Well, no one's keeping up with it. He's getting in trouble left and right. He's like basically leaving the room because they are doing nothing. Like they're moving so slow. And then he's not getting great grades. And they're so confused. They're like, well, he took this before, blah, blah, blah. It's like, because he doesn't care. He's not involved. It's really slow. He doesn't care. So fast forward to the end of the year, I notice, I was like, he's going to get an F. And so I go to them, I'm like, what are you doing about this? Like, I agreed to this for you. And so I had to jump in. And then here I was lucky enough to find 2 tutors that taught kids with like learning disabilities. One was a friend and one was somebody who's recommended. So I'm spending a lot of money. And he would go and he would get tutored and they'd be like, well, he has it, whatever. He'd go and he'd fail. So he was very upset and frustrated. He didn't understand. Even with the background I have at that point, because it's a few years ago, I didn't understand. And I was the one that had to decipher from all the conversations. At one point, I'm talking to the teacher and she said, well, he always gets it wrong, like at the same place. And I was like, well, what place is that? And whenever she said, I realized he's solving for the wrong X. That juncture is where he gets lost. He's solving for the wrong X. And what I figured out is that it's not a math problem. It's a reading problem. He's dyslexic. He has a visual processing disorder. He and his mom. And so it was the reading part. So when you're working with the teacher and they're helping like to read it, he could do it. So Here comes the end. I argue with them to have it read. His teacher that he had for support was I'm going to nominate her for teacher of the year. She's getting so many kids out of school, like just putting in the work. So she was like, I'll read it to him. They love each other. She actually just texted us like, here it is. He's out 2 years. She's sending us an email like, how are you? But she does it with him. He gets a 96. It was 2 days of testing for the final. The first day he got nothing wrong. The second day, I think he got 2 wrong. And I was like, so now what? Right here I come. This is what he can do, but this is what he was showing you here. Clearly there's disconnect and you all didn't pick it up with the teachers with a kid that has an IEP. And I just was staring at them. And all of a sudden it was like, well, we could give him, we don't ever change grades, but for you, we'll give him a C. Or he could come back and take all of his tests again. We're lucky it was a phone call. We were in person because I don't know what I would have done. Because that's just so maddening, right? It's just your mistake and you're doing something for us. So they said, we're going to take our fee. I kind of gave him some grief, but we'll take our fee and move on to the next class.
Mm-hmm.
But it just goes to show, your advocacy and being able to listen and knowing your kid, right? I knew my kid was smart enough. I couldn't figure out what the disconnect was. And I just happened to come across that, but to really kind of press them to do something different. And I had to come up with something different. And quite frankly, that's fine if that's what has to happen. But, I tell a story because you get so frustrated. And I mean, I have the benefit of being a therapist. At that point, was I doing ADHD coaching then? I don't know, but at least I knew more about it. And I have friends that were like school psychologists. I had the benefit of all that and an attorney. And I still had to do that. So this is hard work.
It is.
And it's real. And so I just always like to let people know that you're not crazy, but there are some ways to be able to advocate for your kid and don't be afraid. Because if you don't do it, nobody else will.
Yeah. And even as a teacher, having incredible amounts of experience in the classroom, there's still so much that we're not trained on for special education, IDPs, IEPs, if ever, like the amount of training that we get on those things is pretty minimal. And it's really on the teacher to go choose the like continuing education credits that would then cover this, because teachers get to pick like whatever continuing education credits it like would fit what they need. It's like if you don't have a teacher who's like, yeah, let me figure this out in terms of how do I help kids who have dyslexia? How do I help kids who have ADHD? Like we really don't get a lot of training on that. And so like it is so much on parents to dig in because you know your kid best.
Absolutely. And I was shocked to realize that teachers didn't get that type of training. I was shocked. I mean, I knew as a therapist, we really didn't get a lot of training. I would say it like I don't know, there was a paragraph about, little white boys and they were all just falling out of their chairs. Like that was the depiction. And so it doesn't describe anyone. And it was like a paragraph and there was nothing else. Right. So I didn't even get a lot of education on it. And then kind of find out, unless they're like a developmental pediatrician, doctors don't, psychiatrists don't even get that much education about it. Nope. And so we're all kind of like out here, in our own silos and trying to like put it together. And then if you're a parent, like I have ADHD, so I have ADHD, I have dyslexia, I have visual processing disorder. I try to say I don't have anxiety, but clearly I do. And all these things will, it contributes to the anxiety. Parenting him, it's not his fault, but it contributed to great anxiety for me. The way he was always been perceived, even from a little boy, because my son's a small human. He's probably 5'2" at this point. I don't know, 120 pounds soaking wet. Like he's really small. So he's always been small, but never really wanting to conform to any rules, right? Which I get. Like he wouldn't even want to sleep in the cribs when he was in daycare. They had to put him on the mat. But that perception, especially of a little black boy in a white neighborhood, always was behavioral. And I guess because I had ADHD, I was kind of like that. Well, if it doesn't make sense to me, I'm not doing that. So it's not, a behavioral issue. And I could have a conversation with adults at a very young age that is off-putting to adults because it becomes questioning. Being a girl, I got away with more. Being a boy, it's been a problem for our whole lives. And so the anxiety that came from, trying to keep him calm and try to keep that spark in him, yet saying there are some rules you are going to have to follow. And then other people's perceptions saying like, if 1 second, like I don't know, it's like a criminal mastermind. The next second you're saying he can't do anything. I'm like, look at what you're saying. And doing all that, and in this environment means that there's anxiety and means that parts of my ADHD were really exacerbated, and having to manage that and take care of him. It's a lot. And a lot of parents, a lot of the women that I coach, well, all of them, they have kids. Their kids have ADHD, at least one of their kids. So I have people with 3 or 4 kids, and they all neurodiverse in some way, shape, or form. And that is really a lot.
What would you say were your like strongholds as a mom on like, these are the things I'm going to stick to versus like, these are the things that I'm going to let go or wiggle on? And I guess like, how do you tell the difference? Because like you have experience on your side of your son's now a grown adult. A lot of the moms listening aren't at that phase yet. Like we're still in the trenches. Like, how do you know when you should stick to it and when you flex?
Oh, that's a great and very nuanced question, because it's just like anything. It all depends on your kid. It depends on the day. It depends on what it is and your own values, right? So many people in the mornings, they fight with their kids, and, we would fight too. And they want to kind of get up and get out. We got to the point where, and again, this is like hindsight 2020. So it didn't start out this way, but all you got to do is brush your teeth, like show up with clothes. Brush your teeth, like that. You don't have to eat breakfast because you didn't want to eat breakfast. You don't have to do any of this other stuff. You can wake up 10 minutes before. I don't care. If we get out on time and you brush your teeth, because to me, you need your teeth. You don't want to be in somebody's face with bad breath. And so that could be the fight that we would have, but it's one fight versus, you need to get up at this time. You need to look this way. Like I let go of all that stuff pretty early about the way your child's appearing, and taking some of the load off of him. Sometimes when I could, I would pick out his clothes or say, this outfit or that outfit. That was very helpful for me. Doing this one or that one, not just free will choice, like anything, because that's what took a lot of time. So, when you're saying like, what hills are you going to die on? So a lot of times it can be what two things are great for me and which one, pick one of those two. That way they have autonomy too. And that's something you can actually like take through all the different years. Because when they're little, like yours are little, you pretty much can be like this or that. And they'll give you some pushback, depending on the kid. Some kids are more than others. But it's a little different mix than when they get to be teenagers and those hormones kick in and that sense of autonomy wants to kick in. You've got to give them choice in this, or they'll just be like, no. And my kids will tell you no. And you can't get the sentence out for telling you no. So I had to learn to like give some parameters that I could live with. And then even sometimes if you can come up with a reason that makes sense, like, I don't know everything. And sometimes I am just living, the way my parents brought me up or something I think is right. Or sometimes I get caught up in the neurotypical paradigm too, like I'm human. And, if he can say, or at least express that there's real concern there or something's wrong, then I need to look at it. Right? You can look at why that is, not just be like, well, my house, my rules, right? Yeah. So I think that discernment is not the easiest, but when you can just know your value system and then look at your kid. When your kid is in distress, and that's what it is. There are times he's been in distress, and I would say there are some parenting moments I go, ugh, we would ignore it or be like, get over it. We would do that thing. But there was times when it was like, he's in real distress. Like I don't know what it is. But the distress he's in is just not him being, it's say like, we're too much, we're too loud. It's really, it's distress for him. So I need to stop and figure out what the distress is. And, if I can fix it, great. And if I can't, if this has to be, then that's a conversation we're having too. So I don't know. I think maybe that's how we got through it. A little bit of white knuckling too. And faith and hope. Like I always like to talk about hope. You got to be the one holding the hope. Because it gets tough out here. And if you don't hold the hope, no one else will. So
one thing that really stood out to me is you said that you were trying to take the load off him. And I think so many times as parents, especially when we have ADHD, like we're so caught up in the moment ourselves that we forget the fact that our kid is another human who is carrying around, like granted, very different stresses, but they are not as evolved along and like can't carry the amount of stress that we can. Like with all your mom wisdom, how do we lift that stress off our kids and take that burden off them of things that they don't need to be carrying around?
So I think it's important to make a distinction between like trying to take the load off them or like doing it for them, right? Because you don't want to do too much for them because they do get dependent and you have to have some expectations, right? If you don't, sometimes they want you to lower your expectations. But I don't think of it as lowering. I think of it as looking at the kid that you have and what are the expectations that you see that they can live into. Because our kids are 3 years developmentally delayed, approximately 3 years. What your friend's kid is doing, I don't know, at 10 or whatever, your kid might not be doing or not doing well or consistently. So A, not comparing. And B, again, I had this part of it slowing down. It's hard. You have more than one kid. You have, all these things you're doing, working, whatever. But to take even a few minutes and center yourself and slow down, like, well, what's happening? Because then you can kind of see the things that they might need for you to do. One time we had to do a project. God bless these people with these projects. It was a project, and I don't know, he wanted to be, I don't know, I think it was Satchel Paige or someone in the Negro Baseball League. So we had to draw it. I don't draw, and neither does he, and it was crazy. And so we had all this paper, and he was like freaking out, and I was like, listen, put yourself here and I'm going to draw around. I was like, this is what we're turning in. So he's supposed to be doing all that. We could go through this all night. It's still not happened. But it's like, I'll make you a part of it. And I did whatever. And it's like, put your hand and it'll be a mitt. And then you can do the rest. Me just coming up with the idea and then making this really rudimentary draw. But it took that, it started it for him. And then he could do it. So I think of it like that. We're trying to look and see like, well, where's the sticking point? And then where can I help with that? And, a lot of us have trouble with getting started or knowing where to start or knowing where to end. like what's actually expected. So I would do a lot of that too. Like, let's look at it and what is it that they actually want, especially school. They don't always totally tell you what they want, but I'd be like, what is it that they want? So you just have to give them that. Like, you don't have to give them all the extra stuff or not enough, just those things. And then, we'll go from there. If it's wrong, they'll let you know. So yeah, just taking the parts where you see they're sticking and say, where can I just be helpful?
Yeah. Like I'm seeing like the parent and teacher sides both at the same time because I used to teach middle school. It's like, I would try to do my best to explain, like, here's the rubric. This is what it looks like. Here's how you get an A. Like a rubric is literally instructions of how do you get an A on this project. If you do this, you get a B. You do this, you get a C. This, you feel like I'm trying as a teacher to explain that. And yet when your kid comes home with all these things and they get home and they're like, I don't know what they want. Like kids aren't thinking, how do I get the A? Like, how do I follow these instructions? The kids are like, well, they told me to make a thing. And now they're trying to make the thing. And that's so open-ended, especially for kids with ADHD. They need us to come in and be like, look, what do they want? This rubric is literally telling you this is what they want. So how do you fit your ideas in the rubric? And like as parents, raining all the, the oyster of idea. No, that's not the saying. What's the saying? Like the world is your oyster. Like you're like, yes, your ADHD brain could come up with 73 ideas for this project because you're excited about it, or you are not excited about it and you have absolutely zero ideas. But like we as grownups can come in and say, hey, let's narrow it down. This is what they want. And a lot of kids really struggle in school when you have ADHD. And like, we have to teach them of like, sometimes it's not actually who has the coolest project. It's like, they told you do this. And they need us to interpret that for them. So that was really a good reminder.
I get help with people helping me interpret it. I mean, I have an assistant that I meet with once a week to have an out loud conversation, because the way I know that my ADHD rolls is that sometimes it just swirls up in there. Even if I'm writing it down, it doesn't work. I need to have a verbal conversation. And so I pay someone to come in and listen to me go, oh, and then usually I can figure it out. And if there's something that's missing, she'll tell me. And so if I need that as an adult, you imagine as a kid. And I remember not understanding why it would work and why it didn't. Why some things for me would be like butter. And some things were like so bad. And when I look back, I had some coping skills. I didn't know that that's what they were. And I didn't know what was working. And it was things like that, being a verbal processor, being the one who would give the presentation. Like, you all do all that work and then tell me what I'm supposed to say. Because I'll get up there and say it like we're here. But figuring that out and figuring out how to manage that with people, it took me a while to do that. My kid who doesn't have as great as social skills, it was harder. So also to model that, right? And modeling, this is how you do it. And modeling asking for help, especially with our boys.
Have you ever been invited to a party and you realize like you weren't going to know many people there? And so then you like dreaded all the way going up to the event, or you talk yourself out of it so you don't go because it's scary to put yourself out there in a situation that like, what if I don't like them? What if they don't like me? And it feels stressful. Well, I don't want you to feel that way about hanging out in this community, mama. So I am hosting an open house and I want you to come and meet all the mamas so that you know what kind of people we are. P.S. We're great. And that you feel comfortable joining in this community. Because if you are thinking about joining Successful Mama meetups or thinking about joining the retreat, I want you to know that these are your people. And what better way to do that than to actually meet the people? So come join us at our open house. We are hosting an open house in Successful Mama meetups on November 6th. And come meet the moms, hang out, see what it's like. You'll get the feel for like, who are these people? What's the vibe? Do I want to hang out with them? Yes, you do. It's going to be so fun. So come hang out with us. So it's totally no charge, free, $99. Come hang out at Successful Mama meetups on November 6th. Our meetings are on Wednesdays. They're at 12:30 Eastern. Go over to my website at patriciaSung.com/open house. It's all one word. OPENHOUSE, and sign up for the link so that you get the Zoom link. Remember, this is all virtual, so anybody can come anywhere in the world. See what time it is on your time zone and come join us. For the first 30 minutes. We hang out and get stuff done. So I have help there for like how to plan your week, Or if you just like, I just need to get some stuff done and the body doubling helps, do that. Like, there's no wrong way to show up and do stuff at Successful Mama Meetups. Did you get something done? Great. That's what we're here for, okay? So that's the first 30 minutes. And then the second 30 minutes is social time where we hang out and we make it fun. You actually want to show up to the body doubling because you get to hang out with your friends and meet people who understand how your brain works and you feel at home. So come join us November 6th. Sign up at patriciasung.com/open house. And I can't wait to see your face. And if you are listening to this after November 6th, still go over to that link and see when the next one is. I think I'm going to do this again. I'll see you then. Okay, on to the episode. And it, like, having watched you for the last couple of years, like at the ADHD conference and then like speaking at the women's event, like I have been purposely looking for women who are, hopefully not insulting, slightly ahead of me in age and have kids who are a little bit older to be the kind of like mentors and wisdom that are feeding into not just me, but my community. Like, I want us to be able to look ahead and say, like, there are moms who have been through this. They have so much wisdom to share. And I want like, I'm sorry, there's some crazy people out there. And those are the people I want pouring in. Like, I want the people who are level-headed, tell it like it is, own their ADHD, and show up as themselves and not this like fancy presentation, because that's what I want for the people that are listening to be like, this is the kind of people that we want to like learn from and model from, are people that are real, people who are owning who they are, who are speaking from the heart. I don't want a bunch of fancy razzle dazzle, like plastic on display business. That doesn't help anybody. Just makes people feel bad.
Yeah. And it's like, of course I'm ahead of you. And of course I'm older than you. But of course, it's having somebody like to hold, the way you have hope is for the people who you've seen go through it. And I think being realistic about it in the way of that, it's not like, oh, we learned some tricks and tips and we did this. And then now he's off and he's like, in Ivy League, and going to be a doctor. And it's like, that is some people's story. And that's great. Most of the people I know with ADHD and their kids, it's not that things don't, end up fine, but it's not that smooth kind of linear path. It's a lot of ups and downs. It's a lot of stops and starts. It's a lot of fear. And there's a lot of great stuff that happens. So when you can get the whole picture, I kind of think like, I think about pregnancy and delivery. Like, nobody wants to tell you. And there was that, I wish I remember the name of the book that was like, it was funny, but it really was telling you about delivery. I was like, this is the best book, because it actually said, this is what's going to happen. And it's going to be weird and like gross and suck. They delivered it in a funny way, but it was like, oh, when that happened, I felt more prepared, as opposed to the ones that people are like, oh, well, I don't even remember what happened. And then here's the baby. And then they're like there looking cute. It's like, no, baby comes out. Now I got this responsibility. I know what to do with it. I know to do with this baby. And then I think having a child, with ADHD, we don't know about ADHD. I would think like, even when he was born, like trying to figure out how to breastfeed, he was just like, I don't know. I'm thinking, isn't this natural? And it's like, no, they have no instinct. And realizing that, I figure that kangaroos have babies and they have to go around from the pouch and they find them and they feed. And I was like, this kid's here and he can't feed. And that analysis and created a level of fear, somewhat healthy, somewhat unhealthy, but the fact that you have to take care of them. And so then when they go, like, start to do things in the world and it doesn't appear like what you think it's going to appear like, is I had to like level set from that, right? That, yeah, there's no instinct. Like, your kid is not an instinctual being. And because they're not an instinctual being, you have to help with some of the instincts and hope that some will kick in. And some have, and some we, try to cultivate, and some still aren't there. Some still aren't there. We were speaking, it's like, as he's older now, I can't tell him what to do. One day they're 18 and no one will talk to you, and they don't have to. And sometimes they can't, even though you're footing the bill. And to be like, oh, all of a sudden I'm cut off, where you've been trying to like cultivate these things. It's like, it's a little scary, but trying to activate some of the instinct and knowing that some of it's still not there, and letting them fail a little bit, don't let them fall to the bottom, but let them trip. And then watching them start to get up, and then you can come in and help. And I think that that's also like, we're so used to jumping because, again, it's not a sexual being. If I didn't jump, like, they would die. But then, like, really backing off, and that scaffolding that they say, it's hard, and we're impulsive. Like, I'm impulsive. I want to jump and fix it for you because I love you. But to hold your breath a bit and say, give them a chance, because that's how they get their instincts. Or kids don't just get it. It's not instinctive. It's not natural. But that's the way they'll learn. And with the 2 ages that you have you like noticed that?
Yeah, it's so hard to sit back and know like what's the right amount of struggle that they need to practice this before I jump in and help. It's like they can't have no struggle, but you also don't want them to get so far down that they're like, I can't get back up. That like in the moment, watching them being like, where do I step in? When is the time that is best for you for me to jump in? Like, oh, my parenting's hard.
It's hard. But sometimes too, is when is the time that's best for us as the mom to jump in for them too? Like, as moms, we're told to like not account for ourselves. And I say, you've got to put yourself on the list. It's like, oh, you can't pour from an empty cup. It's more of like, you got to be fulfilled in order to, use the overflow. And sometimes when you're like really only adjusting to all that they need, that's when you aren't yourself. And it's harder for you to be able to make that discernment because you're coming from it with nothing. And so I think that in the beginning, you need to look at it, especially for yourself, because sometimes they need to learn, I might need to do this, right? Or I might need to just jump in and get it done, because if we don't get out the door and I'm late to work again, or I'm worried about it too much, then we're just going to do that. And then maybe regroup and figure out a way to do it differently, or be okay with, you know what, I do make the lunch. Like, I made my kid lunch. I mean, as long as whenever he would get lunch, guess who made the lunch? Me. Fine, right? Because it was just always easier. He would just eat or not eat it. Like, I don't even care. Until he stopped having lunch or stopping by, like, I live in Philly, like, go and get a hoagie at a Wawa. Like, I would do that because, not that he couldn't do it. There was just a point where it's like, that stress was not, for me, was not worth it. It was not worth it, because this kid likes to eat skinny as he is, eats everything that's not nailed down. I'll take care of it. I'm stronger, better. Like, when we talk about delegation, delegate that to me. And you can take your stuff out of that bag and put it in the dishwasher. Right now, that's what you can learn to do, to clean up after yourself, because that part's not my job. So, because that also, but that worked for me, right? So I just think to really, like I said, discernment's hard, and everybody's different. But when you can consider yourself, which that was funny. I have a coach. I was talking to my coach this morning about the difference in the shame level that we have is so different than any male client that I have, that I was like, you can't even understand. Because it's not that we're even trying to live to the gap of like, maybe some things aren't done to what we think we get done. It's really the gap of, we're doing so much, we think we should be doing more. That's the gap. And we're trying to close a gap that's not really even there. Like, you're already doing too much. And because we're supposed to be doing everything. You're a mom, right? The things they say, and anything that's wrong is our fault too, right, Freud? So, all of that leads to the exhaustion and you not being the best mom for this child who's showing up in their best that they can do, like they're trying as hard as they can. So I think just knowing that is to give yourself the grace to be like, I have to take care of me. I had 1, you have 2. Like I said, I know people that have 4 kids, maybe under the age of 12, all neurodiverse. And I'm always like, God bless you.
It's a whole handful.
It is.
And like, when you think about those clients you have that have a whole family full of neurodiversity, what's one of the first things that you help them sort through to start to get a handle on feeling like things at some point are going to be better?
The first thing I do, and actually with any client, is like, yes, this part of it, not all of it sucks, but part of it really sucks. Like, if the parts that are bad, and you're just trying to hold together and act like it's not bad, it's like, it's bad. Like, let's look at what's actually happening here. But when we do that, we look at the parts that are great too. But let's kind of just level set in that, you're not crazy that this is bad. You're running around doing all these things. You are actually exhausted, and that's okay that that's happening, but that's what's happening. Then we can decide, or, I help them to decide what is they think they want to do or need to do, What resources do they have? How to empower the kids? How to be able to take care of school? Who do you delegate to? But the first thing you have to do is sit down and be like, and it's okay. Like, you're not the only one. So I wish it's not one person, several. Like, I run a women's group for Black women with ADHD. So I have several women in the same boat. And I think community too is really helpful with that, because then it's like, oh my goodness, it's not just me. And just knowing that's helpful. And then sometimes people have ideas. They have ideas that I would never even think of because I only have one kid. That always is helpful. So I just always like to level set with everybody, meet you where you are. So then you can decide where you want to go.
Yeah. And it's so true. When you get a whole bunch of ADHD brains together, there are so many good ideas that work for different people. And you're like, oh, I mean, I got a lot of good ideas, but I never even thought anything like that or this, like the number of solutions that people have. You're like, huh, whoa, like I never would have thought of that. And I think when we're vulnerable like that to say like, I need help and I want to know that I'm not by myself, like it's not just, yes, you get a whole bunch of more good ideas, but then you know it's not you. You're not the problem. In so much of our lives, especially as women, we just think it's us.
Yeah, we think it's us. And we've been fed that bill of goods that it's not other people. And again, you see people around who are acting like, and I mean acting like, everything is fine, that their kids are fine, everything is fine, their house is fine, their marriage is fine, their parents are fine, all their friends are fine. They do all this like civic engagement and they're like, you know, in their church or synagogue, like they're doing all these things and they look great doing it. And I'm here to say that not that it's not fine, but it's not so easy. It's not so simple. That's not the way that sometimes people portray themselves, no matter what. And also, you need to do it the way that it works for you. People know my house is lived in. We don't have a huge house and it's lived in. We got a lot of stuff I keep trying to purge, but we do. And so if you're coming to my house, it's going to be clean and not, it's not going to be like dirty, but it's going to be lived in. And I've had to live with the fact that my house is a lived in house and being okay with, I'd rather have a lived in house and spend the time I need to spend with my kid and the time I need to spend with myself and my husband than to stress about that the house, if you knock on my door, just crap all over the dining room table, which you see right away. So I think that too.
Yeah. I'm like, I got a bunch of junk on the table. I normally clean off the table before I do an interview. I just realized I didn't clean off the table and there's massive junk behind me. Like, I love that. A lived in house. Like I have one area that stays clean because my brain will go bonkers if there's not space here. But like the rest of my house, it looks lived in. I am the person shoving piles of crap in the laundry room so that there is room for us to sit at this table. Like, not that I'm trying to impress you, but like there's nowhere for you to sit because I got to move that school paper and the permission slip and the weird art project that like my kid insists it has to be saved, but it's been here for 2 weeks. Like all that stuff's got to go somewhere if you're going to eat dinner at my house. But that's okay. I'd rather have the person over than miss the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think that, again, like that's so important to be okay with it and have the person over, live your life. I have friends that are like, oh, like they don't want to do that, or they don't want to take pictures because they feel like they're fat, or just like some things they don't want to do because it's not perfect. And I'm like, stop. You know, sometimes what we have at the end are just like the pictures or the fact that I'd rather spend time with you than to worry about that. And if it bothers you, then let's all go out. Like, but to find a way to just make it work. Because experiences at the end of the day, we were saying earlier, like your kids grow up, it really is, I feel like it's 112. They do grow up and it is faster than what you think. And if you don't use all these moments to spend time with them or your friends or create moments with people, it's gone. And then also when they leave, you need to have a life. Empty nester syndrome is real. When they go, you look around, you're like, well, who am I? What am I doing? Who are my friends? Oh, you're married to me. Like, there's a lot of that. And it's disorienting because you haven't taken that time to actually live a full life. And to live a full life is to not pick and choose the battles with yourself, like you're talking earlier about with the kids, but with yourself, that what's important and what isn't so important. And so I think we learned, hopefully, from the pandemic, do the thing. If there's something you want to do with people, just do it because you just never know.
Yeah, I think back and I'm like really sad for like late 20s, early 30s, Patricia, who thought that I had to have my house clean before I could have friends over. And I thought I had to, like, I'm like, man, I should have been wearing more bikinis when I was 20. Like, What, like, I was always like, oh, I just I look at, my tummy's too pudgy. It's like, what? It wasn't getting better. 20-year-old you wear the bikini. Like, and even now, wear the bikini. Who cares? Like, the people who are judging because they think they're not allowed to wear the bikini, not because you can't wear the bikini. I wish younger me knew, like, just don't worry about it. Their opinion doesn't matter. Just do it.
I know. Don't you want to hug her?
So much. Well, I did a lot of that in therapy of hugging my younger selves and probably like, oh, it was just, she was trying so hard and it wasn't coming together.
So hard. So hard. So hard. Yeah, I guess I've been having lots of conversations about my 20s for some reason. And I'm like, I was so much. And like I said, trying to like appear in different ways, trying to appear perfect and cute and like cute enough, but I didn't try really hard and not appear what I felt like was a complete mess.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the work that was, all that extra energy and effort, it not allowing me to be my full self. Sometimes I wonder, how did I get how did you make it? Because it wasn't great. So, because I did not have my son till, how old was I? I was almost 40 years old. And they told me it wasn't going to be so easy, but I didn't think I wanted kids because I used to say I was so selfish. That's what I thought. It was more of, I think, just trying to manage myself, my own ADHD. I didn't have any space for anything else. And then when I got pregnant, I had just started grad school to become a therapist. And I was like, okay, well, the child's here. They chose you. They said that, you weren't going to have kids, but here he is. And so when I went to school then, I managed to get through school very quickly with a baby or a newborn. And my son is only 20. And they were trying to tell me to stop grad school and go home and take care of your baby. Because how are you going to go to grad school? Because you had to have a practicum. And they knew I was like working too. And I had a baby. And they were like, how are you going to do all that? You should stop. And that's only 20 years ago. That this is the school administration.
Yeah.
So all the things that are put upon us, sometimes I wonder, it's like, how did you get here? I think it is because of the ADHD. Because I was like, what are you talking about? I don't think of younger me and my mouth. Because I was like, what are you talking about?
I figured out.
I'm doing that. Told them I'm just going to bring, I brought him, like I had him. Like I missed 1 week of school. I had him on a Wednesday. The next class was on a Wednesday. My mother was home. She was like, they said you could miss one class. And she's like, you better go. They were like, why are you here? Did you have a baby last week? I said, yeah. And they were like, you could go home. I was already there. So, I just kept going. And when I had to go, I worked, my practicum was with the elderly. I would take it. I never asked. I just did it. And I clearly ADHD trait. But old people love babies.
They do.
And it allowed me to have conversations with the old people that I might not have been able to have without that quick icebreaker of, oh my God, it's your baby, So, it's both. Like some of the ADHD traits made me nuts, but some of them I'm like, that's how you got here. Because that kind of, I don't know if it's boldness or just sometimes we just don't see that you shouldn't do something. So, you just have to like lean into it, support your kids in leaning into it also, because it is what's going to take them through from being young to graduating into this world. So that's always a good thing.
Okay, well, we're getting closer to time, but I did want to ask about, can you tell us about the nonprofit you're working on?
Oh, sure. Thank you for asking. It's the ADHD Black Professionals Alliance. And so it is a nonprofit. It's a hub for like all things for Black people with ADHD. So for Black professionals that want to work with Black people to be able to have clients, for us to have community, to learn from each other. And then also if you have ADHD and you want a provider that looks like you, coaches, therapists, lawyers, occupational therapists, like anyone, it looks like you. It's a place where you can find them. And then we want to be able to provide, and so we're working on some scholarships for ADHD coaching, because I'm a therapist and a coach. I believe coaching is the way and the light, because it allows you to go from like where you are to the goals that you want to get to. And it's something that we could actually pay for versus like becoming a therapist and like 3 or 4 years of school.
And for the mom who's listening who wants to get involved, how can
you can go to ADHD BPA, or you can go to my website, IngerShaye.com, and you can link to it from there.
And do you have anything else going on that we need to know about?
I always have stuff going on, you know that? So I have a group for Black women with ADHD, professional Black women with ADHD. It's called the Sisterhood. We meet and we talk about all things for Black women with ADHD, give some accountability, some camaraderie and community, and some lessons on ADHD. Because, it's everywhere with us. And I, too, am often surprised. It's like, yeah, that's your ADHD. Oh, yeah, it is. So that's the sisterhood. I always have my one-to-one coaching and starting a course. I just don't have a date for it, but really about being a professional Black woman with ADHD, the kind of barriers and strengths that we have, like the barriers with race and gender and cultural norms that affect us at work, but then the superpower strengths that we have in the society that we're living in. So it's all a lot. That's why I haven't kind of figured out the date, but it should be coming up soon.
Awesome. Well, whenever it's ready, let me know. I'll drop it in the show notes. We'll be there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And I always have, let me just tell you, there's a Facebook group for Black women with ADHD called Black Women with ADHD, Executives and Entrepreneurs. And so that's probably the easiest way, besides all the other socials, where I'm IngerShaye at IngerShaye. But it's the easiest place to kind of find me and find a group. If you want to find a community, there's one there too.
Okay. I'm like, I had more questions for you, and we're just gonna have to talk again because I didn't even get to half the stuff on my list because I got excited about what we're talking about. But I want moms to know that it is okay to raise your kids in the way that fits you and them best. And that's the most important thing that I got out of our conversation today is taking care of both yourself and your kids can look different, but is incredibly important. So I don't want to wrap up without doing our lightning round questions. So you just fill in the blank. You don't have to explain anything. And then we'll wrap up. So
good luck with that. You know how much I like to talk.
I know. I'm always and now we're wrapping up. And then I keep talking. I'm like, no, that's my Achilles heel of podcasting. And I'm always like, but I didn't ask you about energy management. And I know it's something you're really good at, but another day.
Part 2.
So, okay. Number 1, the best thing that I've read or listened to recently is?
Patricia, I listen to so many things. I was listening to my coach's podcast, Translating ADHD.
All right. Number 2, my most boring about me fact is?
That's hard. I'm not. You see me, I'm not really boring. That actually, I like to spend more time alone than people would ever know.
Number 3, when I'm having a rough day, my go-to quote, song, poem, book, podcast activity, whatever is?
When I'm having a bad day, to be like, it's okay, you're having a bad day. And to usually get some sleep, lay down. Because for me, it's usually that I'm doing too much.
Isn't that true? Okay, number 4, don't tell anyone I
don't know. I live so out loud. I don't know. It's probably something really bad in my past that maybe nobody needs to know. So I don't know.
Number 5, if I had a magic fairy wand for one spell, I would take the shame away from every person, especially every woman, about ADHD. I would take that shame spiral away from us because we don't deserve it. And number 6, my best piece of advice for mamas with ADHD is?
To, as we say, just the whole gist of this, that this is a real condition, right? No matter what anybody says, it is real, it's diagnosable, and to be okay with if this is what's actually happening for you and your child, it's okay. And once you can be okay with it, then you can figure out the ways that you want to be able to handle it. So acceptance is the key to you having a good life and for your kid to have a good life with ADHD.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate your honesty and vulnerability, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited that we did this.
Me too. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
For more resources, classes, and community, head over to my website, motherhoodinadhd.com.